Welcome to the Ramayan, Stories of Dharma and Devotion. I'm Sandeep, and in this podcast, we'll journey together through the timeless epic of Valmiki's Ramayan, filled with stories of honor, sacrifice, devotion, and righteousness. Although it's rooted in Indian culture, the Ramayan offers universal lessons that resonate globally. The epic addresses themes such as the triumph of good over evil, loyalty, the struggles of the righteous, family duties, and the power of compassion. These values transcend cultural and religious boundaries, making the Ramayan relevant to everyone globally. We continue our journey through Balakanda, the first chapter of the Ramayan, which introduces us to the early adventures of Ram and Lakshman. Today's episode is dedicated to the story of Tataka, the demoness who once roamed the dense forests, terrorizing all who entered. We'll explore her background, the events that led to her transformation, and the people in her life, such as her sons Maricha and Subahu, and the wise Sage Agastya.
Tataka was not always a fearsome demoness who terrorized the forests and disrupted the sacred yagns of sages. She was once a beautiful and powerful yakshini, born to Suketu, a mighty yaksh king who had longed for a child. Suketu, despite his power and wealth, had no children, which left a void in his otherwise prosperous life. Desperate for an heir, he performed severe penance to Lord Brahma, seeking a blessing. Moved by Suketu's devotion, Brahma appeared before him and granted his wish. He blessed Suketu with a daughter, and thus Tataka was born. Brahma's blessing came with extraordinary strength. Tataka was as powerful as 1,000 elephants. She grew up with the beauty of a celestial being, and her father Suketu loved her dearly, raising her with all the care and affection of a devoted parent. As Tataka came of age, she was married to Sand, a powerful demon who had his own share of strength and influence. Sand and Tataka seemed to complement each other well, and soon they had two sons named Maricha and Subahu. Both sons inherited the strength and power of their parents, and they grew up with a sense of pride in their formidable lineage. The family lived together in relative harmony, and Tataka continued to wield her power, enjoying her life as a yakshini of great strength. However, the tides of fate turned when Sand incurred the wrath of Sage Agastya. Agastya was one of the most revered sages in Hindu mythology, known for his immense spiritual power and wisdom. He was one of the Saptarishis, the 7 great sages, and his contributions to the spread of Dharma were unparalleled. Agastya was also known for his ability to control his temper and for the balance he maintained between his power and compassion. Sage Agastya played a pivotal role in Hindu mythology, not just because of his immense knowledge and penance, but also due to his influence on restoring balance and ensuring righteousness. He was known for traveling across the land, helping to establish Dharma where it was needed. Agastya was instrumental in spreading Vedic knowledge to the southern parts of India, and he was deeply respected by both gods and humans. His wisdom and strength were unmatched, and his devotion to maintaining cosmic order made him a revered figure among all beings. One of the notable stories of Agastya is his role in controlling the Vindhya mountains. The Vindhya mountains, out of pride, began to grow taller and taller, threatening to block the path of the sun and moon. Agastya, with his wisdom, approached the mountains and humbly requested them to lower themselves until he returned from the south. The Vindhyas, respecting Agastya, agreed and stayed lowered, thereby restoring balance to nature. Such was the respect and power Agastya commanded. But Sand, driven by his demonic nature, made the grave mistake of trying to confront Sage Agastya. Sand attempted to harm the sage, unaware of the repercussions he would face for challenging a rishi of Agastya's stature. Agastya, though compassionate, would not tolerate such behavior, especially when it threatened the sanctity of his penance and the lives of the innocent. With his divine power, Agastya ended Sand's life, putting an end to his evil deeds. When Tataka heard of her husband's death, she was filled with rage and grief. Her heart, once filled with love for her family, now burned with a desire for vengeance. Along with her young sons Maricha and Subahu, Tataka set out to confront Sage Agastya, seeking revenge for the death of Sand. Tataka's intentions were clear. She wanted to destroy the sage who had taken her husband's life. However, she underestimated the power and wisdom of Sage Agastya. When she confronted him, Agastya saw her rage and her evil intentions. Despite her tragic past, Agastya could not allow her actions to continue, as they posed a threat to the well-being of the innocent. Instead of killing her, Agastya chose to curse her, transforming her into a hideous demoness. Tataka's beautiful yakshini form disappeared, and she was turned into a monstrous creature. Her beauty was replaced by a terrifying appearance, sharp claws, fiery eyes, and a monstrous figure that inspired fear in all who saw her. Agastya's curse not only transformed her outward appearance, but also intensified the rage and hatred in her heart. Her love had turned into an uncontrollable fury, and now, with her monstrous form, she became even more dangerous. Cast away from the world she once knew, Tataka retreated into the dense forests. Her sons, Maricha and Subahu, also bore the consequences of the curse. They too were transformed, losing their once handsome appearances, and their hearts were filled with bitterness. Tataka and her sons, now bound by their shared curse, took refuge in the forest, where they began to terrorize anyone who dared to enter. Tataka's once beautiful and vibrant spirit had turned dark. Her bitterness and rage led her to attack the sages and disrupt their sacred rituals. She became the very embodiment of hatred and chaos, and the forest, which had once been a place of beauty and peace, turned into a dark and dangerous place under her influence. Tataka's monstrous form was not just a physical transformation. It was a manifestation of the darkness that had consumed her heart. She began to target the sages who lived in the forest, disrupting the yagns by throwing filth and bones into the sacred fires. The sages, who had come to the forest to meditate and perform rituals for the welfare of humanity, found themselves living in fear. The once peaceful forest became filled with the cries of terrified sages, and Tataka seemed to take pleasure in spreading fear and destruction. Her sons, Maricha and Subahu, joined her in these acts of terror, and together they made the forest a place of dread. Maricha, the elder son, was known for his cunning and deceit. He learned to use his demonic powers to create illusions, tricking those who entered the forest. He was powerful and, like his mother, took pleasure in spreading fear. Subahu, on the other hand, was more aggressive. He was fierce and often led the attacks on the sages. Together, Maricha and Subahu became their mother's allies in her quest for vengeance, and they terrorized the innocent without mercy. Sage Agastya, who played a significant role in Tataka's transformation, was a revered figure whose actions were driven by the need to protect the innocent and uphold dharma. He had no personal vendetta against Tataka or Sand, but he could not allow their actions to threaten the balance of the world. Agastya's curse was meant not as an act of revenge, but as a necessary action to prevent further destruction and restore peace. Despite cursing Tataka, Agastya's heart remained focused on the larger good, ensuring that chaos and evil did not prevail. Agastya was not only known for his curses, but also for his teachings and his deep compassion. He was a symbol of how true wisdom involves balancing discipline with kindness. His actions, whether involving Sand or Tataka, were always aimed at maintaining cosmic harmony, not causing unnecessary suffering. Agastya's influence extended far beyond just Tataka's story. He was instrumental in guiding many other significant figures throughout Hindu mythology, always with the goal of preserving balance and ensuring that dharma prevailed.
Maricha and Subahu, Tataka's sons, would later play significant roles in the Ramayan. Maricha, in particular, would go on to become one of Ravan's key accomplices, using his powers to deceive and mislead. But at this stage, they were simply children who had lost their father and witnessed their mother's transformation. They grew up in the shadow of their mother's rage, and this upbringing shaped them into demons who would go on to cause further chaos in the world. The story of Tataka and her sons is one of transformation, from a blessed yakshini and her children to fearsome demons feared by all. Tataka's life was a tragic tale of love, loss, rage, and ultimately darkness. Despite her monstrous actions, Tataka's story carries a sense of tragedy. She was once a loving mother, a beautiful yakshini with the strength of 1,000 elephants. Her life took a dark turn when she allowed her grief to transform into hatred. Her inability to forgive and her desire for vengeance led her down a path of darkness, turning her and her sons into symbols of fear and destruction. As Ram, Lakshman, and Vishwamitra journeyed through the forest, they were aware of Tataka's tragic past and her current reign of terror. Vishwamitra, who knew the significance of ending Tataka's tyranny, sought Ram's help not only to defeat a demoness, but also to restore balance to the forest and bring peace back to the sages who lived there. Tataka's defeat was necessary to restore harmony, and Ram's role in this was crucial in upholding dharma. In our next episode, we will witness the encounter between Ram and Tataka, a moment that marks Ram's first step in his journey as a protector of righteousness. The confrontation will test Ram's courage and his resolve to end the reign of terror that Tataka had brought upon the forest. We will also see how Subahu and Maricha respond to this challenge. Join us as we explore this pivotal moment in Ram's journey in Balakanda. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please share the podcast with friends and family so that we can spread the glorious life of Ram and how Dharma guides us at all phases of our life. While we may not know exactly what happened, this eternal story of the Ramayan serves as a guide for how we conduct ourselves in our day-to-day lives. We have tried to create a story as close as possible to the ancient texts, scriptures, and writings of Valmiki's Ramayan. Until then, may the light of Dharma guide your path.